Good afternoon, good afternoon. This is a beautifully full house, which is a testament to Andy's life and just such a beautiful reflection of this community. I will ask if you're sitting next to an empty chair, please to move in away from the aisles, because as people come in, it'll be much easier for them to access chairs if they're on the edges than in the center. And I think the wonderful thing is, as you come sit next to each other and you don't know each other, you can say, oh, how did you know Andy? How do you know Vicky? How are you connected here? What brings you here? And it gives us a chance to knit ourselves together. So thank you so much for moving in as you can. We'll also be setting up more chairs. We'll get started in just a moment. Ya la 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 ya ya la 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 ya la ya la la ya la 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 ya la ya la ya la ya la ya la ya la 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 Good afternoon. Welcome. I can tell from the incredible, the vitality and the irrepressible chatter in the room, right? The sound of your voices weaving together, how much life, how much love, how much history is in this room. And as we come together to honor and lift up the life of Andy Silberman, as we come together to mark where we are in time and where we are in relationship to the loss of this incredible human being, and as we gather together to let our memories be a source of comfort and uplift. Stories in Jewish tradition are soul's food. When we're feeling spiritually famished, when we're feeling ragged, telling each other stories, good stories, stories that make us laugh and feel and remember and connect, is part of what breathes life back into us. And so as we gather now in a celebration of life, we honor the fullness of the feelings in this space. The grief and the shock, the yearning, the gratitude, and the commitment to love and support Andy's family, who so wisely knew one time was not enough, right? Who knew that actually in the shock of Andy's death, his sudden death, we needed to come back together to give space. Can I just ask, how many people traveled to be here today? May I also ask, how many people are here who knew Andy when he was a teenager? Oh, sorry. I can't wait to find out what that was for, though. Or college, in work life. Oh, Vicky. At the Rocksteady gym. In a place that I don't know about but can't wait to hear about. I can't wait for those stories. In the neighborhood. Oh my goodness, thank you, tennis. Thank you for keeping me honest. Let us not miss tennis. At the JCC. As a babysitter. Oh my goodness, as a babysitter. Right, who has known Andy since he was tiny? Yeah. He was your babysitter? Okay, that makes more sense to me. Great, perfect, amazing. So this is, you are acting out exactly what I knew in listening to your voices all together, which is this is a group that needs to share stories, right? We are going to have a group of people who know that they're sharing stories. You are already pre-selected and their wonderful names are in the programs that were so beautifully designed by Kimberly Yeshikoach. Thank you so much for this. What a tribute. But each of you is a container of memory and stories. And so we hope, and I'm asking on behalf of the family, that if memories come back to you today, there's paper out there, and we're going to invite you to write it down. So that way the family can come back to your memories and remember with you. Okay, so although not all of us will be up on the bima today, up here at the lectern sharing stories, I can't wait. And you just modeled that so beautifully of like, let's actually tell the stories of what connected us to Andy and what connects us to each other. So we're going to begin in song, in music, and then I'll begin inviting people up to the stage to offer your memories. But welcome to Shir Tikva. Welcome to this celebration of Andy's life. And may each of these stories, may the ways that we listen to each other and connect with one another be a tribute to Andy's life and deep comfort to his family. I'll invite up Rachel Lipkin.
Hi. I just wanted to say a couple of things about this prayer. Before Andy had died suddenly, I had recently heard Rabbi Sharon Brous speak at St. Thomas, and someone asked her in these times, how do you feel hope? And what she said was, I don't just wake up in the morning and go, boy, I feel hopeful, especially now, right? But what she said, in order to feel hope, she really felt you had to open your heart and nurture those relationships that you have with people. And open your heart and keep your heart open. And when I went to the Shiva for Andy and heard the funeral, and people were talking about his heart and his reaching out and volunteering, and the work at the Rocksteady gym really moved me. And so I opened up my prayer book and I found this prayer and wrote this. So whenever I will be singing it now forever, I'll think of Andy and Vicky and your family. P'tach libi b'toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha tirdof nafshi. P'tach libi b'toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha tirdof nafshi. nafshi betach libi b'toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha tirdaf nafshi. Open my heart to live your Torah, that I may do your mitzvot. Open my heart to be your Torah, bringing goodness and peace for all on earth.
So with our hearts open, I'm going to invite up Todd Jones. And after Todd, Rick Petrak, and then Jane Southwood, and then Jim Marr.
Thank you all for inviting me here and being part of this celebration. I first met Andy face to face in Durham, North Carolina, in 9th grade, in the school year 1971-72. To be precise, it was about 12 hours after I saw him walking to school with his cousin Natalie, a classmate and neighbor of mine. There were rumors around school that Natalie's cousin Andy had lost both parents, and that his Uncle Bernie and Aunt Pauline had taken him in. Despite the often hysterical over-exaggerations of junior high school gossip circles, these rumors turned out to be sadly true. My friend David Zung and I went over to the Silberman home that first night and awkwardly introduced ourselves to Andy. He was painfully shy. We attributed that largely to the life-altering tragedies of which he was still no doubt in the raw stages of processing. But we sat with him in his room and chatted for an hour or so. He spoke of his love for all things Detroit: the Tigers, Lions, Pistons, Red Wings, his life in Oak Park, and his friends Leslie Traeger and David Hubley. That I've even come close to remembering their names some 53 years later speaks to his frequent reminiscences of them. And it also turned out he had a sister, Eve, at Duke, who greatly eased his traumatic transition to Durham. Beyond our academically privileged, largely white Duke Forest kids, which included a healthy Jewish contingent, Andy developed friendships across racial and socioeconomic lines. Through junior high and high school, he cultivated ties to black classmates and to Doug, a kid from East Durham, a kid from East Durham, which is working class white folk, who had a stereotypical deep Southern drawl and politics to match. Andy stayed in touch with Doug throughout his adult life, despite Doug and his wife being deeply committed MAGA supporters. Andy was clearly academically gifted, but also possessed of a sense of mischief that further endeared him to us. He and I were particularly unserious, at that age, about certain aspects of scholarly integrity. We would challenge each other to write papers for school that were increasingly divorced from any actual substance or fact. Instead, daring each other to get away with brazen fictions and spectacular absurdities disguised as scholarly research. I was pretty proud of my paper with a deliberately obtuse title, something about embryonic development of vertebrates, relying far more on my creative writing skills than on the drudgery of research. But Andy completely obliterated my pedestrian attempts. He wrote a history paper about Darda, the philosopher, who made his fortune inventing saddlebags for camels. Darda had a sidekick named Recrap, which was coincidentally the name of the teacher to whom he was to turn it in, but spelled backwards. On the bus ride to school that morning, on the morning it was due, we all read it in delicious shock that he was so brazenly walking to the edge of the volcano, while I had merely flirted on the outer periphery. Surely the teacher would recognize his own name backwards. Surely Andy would get busted. No. A+ paper. We knew then we were in the presence of a world-class wordsmith whose prose was so intoxicating the veracity of his writing was rendered moot. No doubt he was a more diligent scholar in his later years after high school. When my aunt, by way of Minneapolis in Edina, passed away in 2013, I reached out to Andy and Vicky. They were to be elsewhere the Memorial weekend, but graciously lent me their house for a few days. All throughout their home, I could clearly see what a warm and loving family they had. Not just the two boys, but with exchange students they took in to prolong the joys of parenting. Andy clearly valued his family immensely. He was warm, of course, funny and loyal, but his commitment to family was even stronger, having lost his parents and having been so lovingly adopted by his Uncle Bernie, Aunt Pauline, and his cousins. Andy and I were so looking forward to our 50th high school reunion, due in October of this year. We'd already been talking about it between ourselves, cracking jokes and pressuring more reluctant friends from back in the day to join us. There will be an enormous void in the celebrations, not just among his inner circle of friends, but among all the alumni who remember the hilarious white guy with a fro. For all of our collective sorrow from losing him, I look forward to that important milestone in mourning, where thoughts of Andy bring more joy than sorrow. Until then, we can lean on each other in mutual support, then regale each other with wonderful stories of this very special man. I'm so glad I could be here today and share in our grieving, cry at our loss, and laugh in the joy of having known this man who triumphed so lovingly over tragedy. Thanks.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm not Jewish, but nobody's perfect. Good afternoon to everyone, and a special greeting to Vicki and the rest of the Silberman family, and all of us who are gathered here as friends so that we can celebrate the life of the wonderful man, Andy Silberman. I'm Rick Petrak, often referred to by Andy as Rod, sometimes still referred to as Petro by some people from Carleton, and still occasionally called Beast. I want to thank Vicki for giving me this opportunity to speak today. My only fear is that I will never be able to do justice to his memory. But I do relish this opportunity to remember such a good friend, a great dad and husband, a wonderful human being, and a truly unique individual. He was a huge mensch, as the rabbi had said at the funeral service held earlier last month, which is a perfect description of Andy. For my fellow goys in the crowd, a mensch is a person of integrity and honor. Andy was quite a character, and he was also a man of great character. He showed tremendous courage in his battle against the many medical problems that he had been enduring the past several years. It was truly admirable, the degree to which Andy showed strength, resilience, and determination in these efforts. His courage and forbearance while undergoing multiple tests and many surgeries was simply inspiring. I was able to see the video of the funeral service that was held previously, and I appreciated many of the qualities highlighted by the speakers that day. The beautiful poem read by Michael, that heroes are remembered but legends never die. Eve's summary of their childhood, not surprising to hear that Andy was a cute kid. Maybe a little surprising, but I didn't know him as a kid. Jake's assessment of how Andy set a perfect example of fatherhood. Dan Matern's comments, among others, when he wasn't leading cheers, that Andy was the hub of our Carleton group. And the rabbi, not only referring to him as a huge mensch, but noting how Andy honored his parents by the way he led his own life. I first met Andy our sophomore year at Carleton College. He was doing an internship in Minneapolis, and I was rooming with Tom Goldstein and Mark Blazer. Andy came to Northfield occasionally to visit Tom and Mark, whom he had known the previous year. I don't really recall much of the first visit, other than I found Andy to be a completely likable and interesting character. And any suggestion that these feelings that I had were influenced by, in contrast to the personalities between Andy and my roommates at that time, are completely apocryphal. So as it stands, I was a close friend of Andy's for nearly 50 years. Friendships are often built on the foundation of mutual interests and appreciations of each other's personalities. In our case, the interest was humor, and the personality trait was sarcasm. Close friends, in addition, have the ability to be vulnerable and authentic with each other, and Andy was the most self-effacing, open, unassuming human being, deriving great humor from his own shortcomings, at least as he perceived them, and seemed to emphasize them. No one I knew worked harder at being happy, and no one I knew had a happier marriage. Vicki and Andy are included in a very small group of people in my life with whom I've laughed until I cried, and I cherish those memories now. I have some very specific memories of our time at Carleton. Andy was, as mentioned already, a huge fan of everything Michigan sports, including everything in the Detroit professional area. He was a wonderful racket player. Whether it was tennis or racquetball, I could never compete with him on that level. He also has not been mentioned previously that he was quite open about his desire to be the President of the United States in the future. So knowing that, I seized on the opportunity for a cabinet position in the future and lobbied Andy to be the Surgeon General. He, however, had already offered that position to Mike Wolkowski, but said I could be the director of the Food and Drug Administration. He therefore, thereafter, would sometimes refer to me simply as Food and Drug instead of me. Such, food and drug, have you gone to the cafeteria yet? Which raised some eyebrows for people, not about the food part, but the drug part. Since graduation from Carleton, he has shared his time, his interest, his family with me. As was said previously, he made certain we kept in touch, for which I am forever grateful. It is impossible for me to adequately describe all the things I admired about Andy, but to name a few, his ability to express himself with words, both spoken and written, with clarity, eloquence, precision, and humor, was remarkable and enviable. He was gracious, generous, and humble in sharing his thoughts, ideas, knowledge, time, and abilities. His work with the people suffering from Parkinson's disease to improve their strength and mobility through boxing is only one example of his selflessness. In a typical unassuming fashion, when I emphasized the value of these efforts, his only comment was he got more out of it than they did. This certainly is emblematic of what the wonderful person that Andy was. So how will I remember him? His love and dedication to his family was palpable. His desire to share his life with friends was remarkable, and so appreciated by all of us with whom he kept in touch, as evidenced by the number of people and the distance they've traveled to be here today. He was humble, humorous, insightful and intelligent, thoughtful and thought-provoking. I am probably a little smarter. Wait, let me start again. I am probably a little smarter, possibly a little wiser, but definitely a much happier person for having known him. I will try to serve his memory with my own attempts at being more grateful for the time I have with friends, more understanding of the people I don't know and some of the people I do know, and kinder to everyone I meet. Thank you again for this opportunity. This is truly a day of celebration. May his memory be a blessing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jane Southwood, and I'm joining you today to celebrate the life of Andy Silberman. I met Andy when I was the creative director at RBC, otherwise known as the Royal Bank of Canada. He came highly recommended, and I hired him as a freelancer to do financial writing for us. I instantly found him so easy to talk to, loved his sense of humor, and his visits often evolved into lunch at the Brothers Deli. There he would catch me up on his teenage boy's latest escapades, his sister Eve's visits from Michigan, and then there was always Vicky. He absolutely adored Vicky. Well, what's not to adore? It was one of his most appealing qualities in my mind. As the years went by, he would often text me photos of her in different get-ups she was in, with words like, "Isn't she a cutie patootie?" Or, "Look who is Ms. Cutest Halloween 2014. I cherish those notes and pictures now. As the years went by, I learned that Andy was the kind of person you could always count on, both personally and professionally. He could take a project and run with it, never miss a deadline. His writing was always on target. He took complicated topics and made them easy to digest for our newsletters and brochures. I was lucky enough to work with him for over 10 years. Over those years, Frank and I were also introduced to the rest of his family, and we often got together for holidays and dinner parties. We enjoyed Andy's tradition of getting White Castles on election night, cooking delicious pizzas from scratch, his passion for the Detroit sports teams, and his love of an evening of Curb Your Enthusiasm. He added to my collection of CDs on my birthdays with what he called women singing sad songs. I loved being introduced to the new singers each year. In rereading dozens of emails back and forth between us, I tried to analyze why I felt so close to Andy. I realized it was simply that he was the genuine article. He was kind to everyone, always ready with a self-deprecating joke or comforting word. He made gatherings more fun just by being there. He was kind in a quiet, consistent way. He checked in. He showed up. He remembered the little things about people and took the time to mention them. I always felt he had my back, and I felt very lucky to know him. Some lazy afternoon, when you're missing Andy, do him a favor. Go to an independent bookstore and buy a book. That's what he would have done. I will miss him terribly. Thank you.
Okay. Women singing sad songs. I'm stealing that line from Andy. I love it. My name is Jim Maher, and my connection to Andy goes back to 1987 when we both worked at what was then IDS Financial Services. Although we were both paid to write, which we loved, we hit it off right away because of our common interest in sports and politics. While we were big sports fans, we were not Minnesota sports fans. As has been well chronicled, Andy's ties were in Michigan, and I grew up in Packer country, so we found a shared cause in cheering against the Vikings. In other words, we were square pegs and round holes. Andy and I also shared a liberal political viewpoint, which at the office we kept to ourselves. And we often rolled our eyes at what struck us as examples of corporate absurdity Andy was masterful at quietly but cuttingly making fun of the culture, the mundane tasks we often had to undertake, and the inevitable burdens of corporate bureaucracy. Although we both lasted a number of years at corporate, we both eventually found our escape as freelance financial writers, still relying mostly on the big companies for those paychecks, but at least being able to do so without dealing with the day-to-day life of corporate culture. Andy and I exchanged constant emails in our freelance lives and had frequent lunches with our fellow freelancer and ex-IDSer, John Spindler, our good friend who's here today, and picking up right where we left off when we all worked together. Andy and Vicki kept up on our daughter Casey's latest adventures. One day over lunch, I mentioned to Andy about Casey's long work commute from Afton to St. Louis Park as a teacher while also pursuing a master's degree. Andy said, hey, she could always stay at their house if she ever needed a place in the cities. So, of course, we jumped on that. And thanks to their generosity, that turned into 2 years of Casey using their extra bedroom several times a week. My wife, Gail, daughter, Casey, and I are forever grateful for that kindness. Every day, I miss our email exchanges tinged with Andy's wry humor. Until the Lions recently became a formidable football team, Andy would sarcastically recall his team's past glories, which required him to hark back to the 1950s. In our many political discussions, Andy often offered succinct, to-the-point messages that he felt Democrats should use. For example, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Andy offered this line he thought President Biden should express, and I'm quoting Andy here, "The people in Ukraine are literally dying to preserve their democracy. Maybe we should make a little more effort here in this country to preserve ours and stop trying to suppress votes, ban books, and support would-be autocrats." Andy may have missed his calling as a presidential speechwriter. He also enjoyed poking fun at opposing political figures, and he loved satirizing anybody who picked on his Jewish heritage. Last fall, not long before a Lions-Vikings football game, but following another devastating hurricane in the South, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, known for her conspiracy theories, posted this, quote, "Yes, they can control the weather." Well, Andy had a response. He emailed it to me. He said, and this is his quote, "Damn, Marjorie Taylor Greene has just announced they, meaning us Jews, of course, control the weather. She always uncovers our secrets. First the space laser, and now this. Oh well, since the cat is already out of the bag, I now have to debate whether to use the space laser to scorch the hands of Vikings players or simply whip up a typhoon whenever the Vikings have the ball. So many options." That was classic Andy. I close with this email exchange that occurred just this past January involving Andy, our freelancer friend John, and me. John and I grew up Milwaukee Brewers fans, and longtime Brewers announcer Bob Uecker had just passed away. Andy sent us condolences, and we emailed back and forth a bit, but he had a closing line that was truly prophetic. He said, "It seems like all the great ones are gone." Thanks.
I'm going to invite us just to take a moment and savor those stories. We are at the midway point of our storytelling, and we're going to take time now just to listen to a song that is particularly beloved by Vicki. Just to settle in, after we hear a song, Adonai Roi, we'll hear from Vicki and from Mike, and then from Katie Grove and John Hilton. But first, a song.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here, each and every one of you. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm grateful that many of you, traveled from far away to be here. I'm wearing pink today in honor of Andy because one of his nicknames for me was Pinky. So I thought that was appropriate. I feel so fortunate that I married, and had a family with Andy. He was so devoted to Jake, Mike, and me. He was a lot of fun, always sharing stories. Sorry. Should I start over? No, he was always sharing stories. I'm sorry. He was always sharing stories that highlight. Oh, no. He was a lot of fun. Always making me laugh, but was also, I feel like I'm so loud. Okay, great. Always making me laugh, but he was also sensitive and tender-hearted, and I wanted to share a few stories that highlighted his tenderness. Andy and I started dating in August of 1981. We got engaged in March of 1982. We had a year-and-a-half engagement before marrying on September 10th, 1983. During the long engagement, I was the wedding planner, and the planning grew a life of its own. I mean, I just loved planning that wedding, and anyway, and I thought it was a lot of fun. So on the first day of our honeymoon, our first full day, we were in New York City walking through Central Park, and I stopped and I said, Andy, I'm really sad our wedding's over. And instead of being annoyed that I wasn't expressing marital bliss, he very tenderly looked at me and said, I bet a lot of brides feel that way. He was always, that was Andy. He always met me halfway and was understanding and sensitive to my feelings. Another tender story is the day our first son, Jake, was born. Jake had a little hat on like newborns do, and we were in the room that night, and we pulled back the little hat, and we saw Jake's little curls, and Andy burst into tears, and he said, he's so innocent, he's so vulnerable, he's relying on us for everything. And I remember I can count on one hand how many times I saw him cry, so that was a very poignant moment. Andy didn't think anyone was small and was always rooting for the underdog. Two of his favorite movies that demonstrate this are It's a Wonderful Life, where George Bailey finds out just how much his life has impacted others, and the other one was Rudy. Rudy was an undersized guy who, after much hard work and perseverance, finally made the Notre Dame football team. Andy liked these kinds of stories, obviously. Anyway, for one of our wedding anniversaries, Andy surprised me and gathered a few of my choir friends, and they serenaded me outside our bedroom window. And they sang, I Love You Truly, which was sung in It's a Wonderful Life. I was really annoyed. I was sitting on my bed. I was sitting on my bed, and he goes, open up the shade. And I go, why? And then I did, and there they were singing to me. My bedroom was probably messy, and I didn't want to. I don't know. Life was an adventure with Andy. He was always looking for new and fun things for us to do together and planned many great trips around the U.S. and visits to other places like Israel, Brazil, St. Kitts, and most recently, Palm Springs. He was always reading, and he was curious about the world and was always learning and sharing things that he had learned with me, which I will really miss. He loved music of all decades and would sing lyrics of sweet songs to me. The most recent songs he was singing was an Emmylou Harris song called Someone Like You. And the main lyric is, I was always waiting for someone like you. And the other one he recently sang to me was a Kathy Mattea song that's Where You Been? And it's a real tearjerker. It chronicles a 60-year marriage, and you know how that can go. It ended beautifully, but sadly. Anyway, so I have fond memories of our times ballroom dancing, and we took many a ballroom dance lesson, and at one point we were members of the Linden Hills Dancing Club, which was in existence for 103-4 years. And Andy was so cute on the dance floor. Andy, I miss you terribly. I cherish our life together, and I will always love you.
All right. Oh man, it's been a really hard, obviously. Wow, didn't picture it going this way. Yeah, it's been a really hard month and a half, but thank you guys all for being here. Seeing so many people here gathered to celebrate my dad truly means the world to myself and my family. It's really just a reminder of how many lives he touched, and more importantly, impacted throughout his time on Earth. For both myself and my brother Jake, there aren't enough great things we could say about him. Yeah. Whether it was coaching our teams, when we were kids, or helping us through life's tough moments, or just checking in with a quick text, he never missed a beat, except maybe on the dance floor. No matter where we were in the world, he showed up, including visiting me during my time living in Israel for 2 years, or like my mom said, Jake's travels through South America. One of my favorite memories was playing ping pong in our basement with my dad. It was serious business in our house. We played thousands and thousands of games, and my dad was super, super strict on keeping like tallies for every win. Anytime Jake came to town, we had a ping pong tournament that my dad usually won. And anytime I would get a little overconfident or win, he would always have this saying, and he had hundreds of these types of sayings. I have no idea where he got them from, but he said, as long as I'm around, you'll always be number 2. One of the biggest things we shared was our love of Michigan sports. Jake and I being born here in Minnesota, all of our friends were, diehard Vikings, Timberwolves fans, and Jake and I were diehard Michigan fans, Lions fans, and the Lions were terrible almost my entire life. Either my junior or senior of high school, they were 0-16. So we would text about them all the time, no matter what team it was. It would kind of just roll into the next season. I moved back to Minnesota about 5 years ago from upstate New York, and he and I watched basically every Detroit Lions game. Usually every time we made a homemade pizza from Broder's, one of our favorite neighborhood restaurants, with their ingredients. I was usually standing, yelling at the TV. Dad was usually on the couch, yelling at the screen, thinking it made a difference when it really didn't. But It felt like it did. We were all in it together, and we'd be texting Jake if he was, usually out of state. When my dad passed, my wife, Lauren, and I immediately knew we had to honor my dad. So we decided to give our incoming daughter the middle name of Andy, A-N-D-I-E, in honor of him. That's more of the feminized version of Andy. I look forward to continuing the tradition of visiting Detroit yearly and taking our new daughter, Noah, N-O-A, very popular name in the Jewish faith for women, to games to Detroit. I know that my dad would have loved to do that with his granddaughter. I'm happy to know that Lauren got to know him, love him, and she would always tell me that he's her favorite Silberman. Yes, so Dad, thank you for the text, the ping pong games, for your love, and for you always kind of being in my corner. I'm extremely sad you won't get to meet your granddaughter, but I know you'll always be watching over her as her Zadie in heaven. We'll miss you, but we'll carry you with us every single day, now and forever. I love you, Dad.
I don't think hardly anybody here knows who I am. I think the tallest person in the room, the two tallest people in the room know who I am. My name is Katie Grove. Vicki, you and I have spoken on the phone. Until recently, I headed up the Rocksteady boxing program in St. Paul. And I have brought a couple of props. One thing that I have is I'm wearing my boxing shoes. And they're red and black to go along with my outfit. The other thing I brought along are the mitts, because that was Andy. So for those of you who don't know, Rocksteady Boxing is a program that uses boxing to deal to the skills required for boxing to deal with the symptoms related to Parkinson's disease. And I don't know how I inherited Andy, but I think he came over from Uppercut, maybe. I had just moved to the Twin Cities and had started a program in St. Paul. They shut down and I inherited a whole bunch of people, a couple who are here in the audience at this particular point. What I wanted to pass along to you is that I spoke to one of our boxers and she said there are three things that she so appreciated about Andy. One of them was his kindness, one of them was his positivity, and the third one was his patience. And if you know anything about Parkinson's, and some of you may and some of you may not, the thing about it is everybody needs to be treated just like you don't have anything going on. And what was important about our program is that we never used the word patient or client. We call everybody in there a boxer, right? Those of you, we call you a boxer, because everybody who showed up there is a boxer, no matter what level or what their function was as far as Parkinson's. So before we would start a class, Andy and I were usually standing on the side, and we might be having a discussion, and I'm glad that somebody brought up politics, because we happen to be on the same side, but we would usually talk a little politics without saying too much, and kind of roll our eyes, and then we'd let it go. But when it got time to work out with the gloves, everybody had gloves and you hit bags, you didn't hit heads, by the way. That would not be good with Parkinson's. Andy would go out with a pair of these mitts and he would go from person to person holding the mitts up, and he would go all the way around the room asking you to, whatever we were doing, whatever punches we were doing, Andy would go around from person to person. And I think if I'm right, Don, you can verify this. Was he pretty easy on you or was he hard? He made you work, right. So Andy was very nice, very kind, very patient, very positive, but he didn't let you get away with anything. He made you work really hard, and I really appreciated that. The thing about rock steady boxing and many exercise programs is that it's all about family. And when you come into a gym and everybody in there who is working out has Parkinson's, that is your family. You love them, you hate them, you want to hit them, perhaps at some point, but that is still your family. And for me, Andy was all about family, whether it be his family or whether it be boxing. Everybody in there is a family together. So what I would like to say is that at the end of any of our classes, we would all get together in the middle. We might discuss what was coming up, and then we would all put our hands in the middle, and we would say, what would we say, Don? Hard work, dedication, rock steady boxing. So I want to change that a little bit, and everybody put your hands out here in the middle, and we're going to say loudly, hard work, dedication. It's all about family. Thank you.
And I'm probably the person who knew Andy most recently among the people who are speaking here. I've been married to Eve for not quite 12 years. She got a lot of mileage out of telling people she got married for the first time at age 60, and you could see their eyes widen. She'd been a dear friend and a colleague for 40 years or more. And then my life changed and her life changed, and I managed to become a Silberman. So there are many worse things in life that could happen there. And one of the less worse things is that I managed to share my notes with Eve through her Google Docs and then cannot connect to them now. So you'll bear with me as I improvise and try to say that I came to the Silbermans late. I knew them primarily because Eve's original plan was that Jake would marry my daughter. They were due almost simultaneously in April of 1987. And to Eve, that just seemed like the perfect plan. As Jake and Katie grew up, that didn't turn out to be their perfect plan, but they had their own plans, which worked out fine. But I did see them on their pilgrimages to Detroit. They would come, and Eve would always borrow my blue folding futon, as she called it, so that I'm not sure who got to sleep on the futon. Okay, yeah, and you both kept getting bigger. Yeah, it was a wonderful thing. And so she would bring the boys over to play with Katie and Brandon, the boy next door, my neighbor's grandchild. Brandon still vividly remembers them being chased out of the construction dumpster at the former black church down the street. And we'd go down to the parks, and they would have a great time. And then, of course, there was that memorable moment when we had a tornado warning, and we all gathered under the table in the living room. Which turned out to be unnecessary, thank goodness, because it wasn't the best protection. At a later date, I actually had indoor access to my basement, so that it was a little, if we needed it again, and we haven't needed it again. But it was wonderful to see Andy's devotion to his family. It was just, I've known a lot of people, I've known a lot of families, but as I wrote this note, actually, and I think that's how I got honored by being up here last, Vicki, was that I just felt that Andy had this glow about him, this warm glow, that just being with him made me feel better about the world, that it was just a safer, better place with Andy in it. And thinking about it further, I realized that glow really is the whole family. I picture you, and I picture you sitting around watching Detroit sports, and in the periods that I'm remembering, you're mostly yelling at the screen. And it obviously helped because they got better. So, not to belittle that. But I was thinking about this just last night, and I realized that I have a bunch of, my mother's parents were Presbyterian missionaries. I've often said I don't know which of my grandparents had the most difficult row to hoe. I had a grandfather who was a failing rancher in Wyoming, and a grandfather who was trying to convert Iran to Presbyterianism. Neither worked too well. It's fascinating, the history of agriculture. My grandfather went broke working 1,000 acres. There's now one family supported by 10,000 acres there on the edge of the Wyoming-South Dakota border, and that's just the way the economics work. It's really painful to see. But a number of I bring in the Presbyterians because a number of my mother's siblings turned into Quakers instead. But that will happen when you send your eldest boy to Oberlin and he gets attached to other ideas. And so one thing that they have taught me that I found very helpful in my own life is the concept of the light, that spark of the divine within all of us. And I realized that when I was talking about that glow that I saw in the Silberman family, I really think it was the light. It was the divine within all of us that I saw, and that was embodied by Andy, because he was so open, so accessible, so willing to accept you as you were and interested in you as you were. He really was in touch with the divine inside him. And through that, I saw it in his family, and I see it in life. And I just wanted to say that it was wonderful to realize that I'd seen that here in my late married life, my late married Silberman life, to realize this connection to my own family's beliefs, because I really think that that's what he did. I think he was in touch with the light in all of us, and he helped us see the light in all of us. And so I want to thank him for that, and thank him for being part of my Silberman family.
So I'm an unannounced speaker who talked my way onto the podium, as some of my Carleton friends would probably recognize. So my name's Tom Goldstein. I met Andy freshman year. We were mismatched as roommates, meaning we were not roommates when we started the year. We both ended up at opposite ends of a hall in this very out-of-place high-rise at Carleton College, a 7-story building, and we were on the 7th floor. And I met Andy the first day, and this white Jewish kid with this huge afro. And here we are, 2 Jewish kids in Northfield, Minnesota, wondering how the hell we ended up in the frigid north. And I think, as everybody is told, Andy just had a kind of an irrepressible spirit about him, and it was just impossible not to like him. And so after Carleton had this funky trimester system, which most other school people would know as the quarter system, except at Carleton, you got off at Thanksgiving, and then you were off until New Year's. So you had this 6-week break. And so Andy and I had both decided during the first trimester, that we were with the wrong roommates, and we were able to actually organize a switch, and so we became roommates as of January 1st. And living with Andy was a really interesting experience. We were both night owls, and so we were up at all hours of the night, and there was a pizza place in downtown Northfield called Bill's Pizza, and I think we probably paid for whatever renovation they may have made, because we were constantly ordering pizza to the point where when we would call, they wouldn't even ask where we were. They just knew the room 707 Watson Hall, and it just became we all of our summer savings and everything went to pay for the pizzas. But I just think of all the crazy riotous times we had where we'd start studying at midnight. Andy would have a paper due the next day, and he would literally start writing it at midnight, and he would just knock it off in this little, I don't even remember what the brand typewriter was, but he was also, because his handwriting was awful like mine, he was a great typist. And he would regale me with, because I, lived with him right after right after high school, tell me about all his Duke friends, one of whom I've actually seen in person here, but he would talk about Duke and David Zung and all these people. And so it was really extraordinary. But, I thought of this funny story that I think that Andy, of course, appreciated, and hopefully you all will as well. But at the time, Gary Trudeau was very popular with the cartoon Doonesbury, and certainly was the preeminent political cartoonist of his time. And I think I got a hold of a copy of the original Yale cartoons, a little book that he put together. And it had all this stuff about dating, and this guy, Mike Doonesbury, was just a failure at everything. And there was this one strip that we especially loved because Carleton was not what you would call a dating haven. I don't know if dating actually took place there, but so that was kind of why this book and these stories really resonated with us. But there was this one scene where Mike Doonesbury is out with his date at a movie theater, and he puts his arm around her and he says, "She was cold to the touch." And then the woman says, "Mike, why do you have your hand in my soda, in my drink?" And then Mike says, "The crushed ice should have tipped me off." And so Andy miraculously was on a date once, and I don't remember how we happened to be at the same place the same time. And I just saw Andy, and I said to Andy, "The crushed ice." And he had to, his grin, he had to just try so hard not to burst into laughing. And then afterwards, we had a huge laugh, because, as you can imagine, the date didn't really pan out. But the main thing I wanted to say is that learning through all the reminiscence that people shared at the funeral and here today, Andy was, he was a great guy when I met him, and shy and all the other things, but he turned into this amazing human being, mensch, and gave so much to others. And I think the biggest compliment that I could offer to Andy and Vicky, and to really remember him by, is you guys turned out two wonderful kids. And to see these guys grow up into such great young men, there's no better testament to you guys and your marriage and the kind of people you are. And that is amazing to see, to watch them from having known them when they were infants to see what they've turned into. So congratulations.
We have the gift of getting to hear music now, but I just want to reflect back as we move into this time of music, what it means to be students of love. Getting to hear the stories of Andy's life and the way that he cultivated relationship. We all get to be students of the way that he loved. And so many people in this space were recipients of that, and now get to be craftspeople of that love. And one word that I didn't hear, but that as someone who didn't know Andy well, has been just reverberating through me in the stories that have been shared, is the courage to love. The courage to be present enough to invite the people around you into presence, into the brilliant weirdness that each of you has demonstrated today. Into getting to be who we are instead of pretending that we're the person we're supposed to be. And I think that's the light you were talking about, is the getting to be precisely who we are. And I just want to offer, as we move into song and then into Mourner's Kaddish, a chance to just say we're here and we're grieving and we're grateful, that I cannot imagine a more powerful blessing for you, Mike and Lauren, as you get ready to welcome the next generation, B'sha'a Tova, at the right moment, in a good moment. May you be students and teachers of love, and may your family hold you in that. And may you, in this path of grieving that you're on, also feel so enriched and enlivened by the love that you carry. So I'm going to invite Dan and Michelle to come and sing, and I'm hoping you'll share a little story about why this is the song you're singing. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Dan Matern, and this is my sister Michelle. She's going to carry this song for us. So anyways, I should give some context to the song. And could you say snowbird? Come on, at this type of event. About 50 years ago, Dr. Food and Drug here, who you heard from Chicago, invited Andy and myself, we were in college, and probably somebody else out here from college to come and visit, and he said, we gotta go see this singer, Bonnie Kolak, who's a well-known folk singer from Chicago. She hung out with somebody called John Prine, who you've probably heard of, and Steve Goodman. Those three were the trinity of folk singers in Chicago in the 70s and 80s. So Rick said, we're going to the club. I got a great table, like right in front. And she's singing lovely songs, and there's about two-thirds way through the performance, there was just a little break in the action, and I said to her, hey, can you play Snowbird? And I've never had such a look of disdain thrown at me in my life. She paused, stared me down, and said, I don't do that song. That's Anne Murray's song. That's 50 years ago. But I've had many gigs with my sisters. I've had concerts, and Vicki and Andy were totally supportive. Came to many of them. But always, there would be a person in the audience who would say, hey, Mad, that's my college nickname, play Snowbird. Now, you know who that came from? Numba, his college nickname. Like number one, we were talking about number two. There you go, he's number one. I mean, I don't know how many times, hey, Mad, play Snowbird. So the last gig he was at, I was ready. I had an original copy that my wife, Deb, ordered, and I stood up there and said, hey, you know that guy that just requested that? I will be singing it for him for the first time ever, and I'm going to give him a copy of the song. So I, got it back at him. So here we go. Beneath this snowy mantle, cold and clean, the unborn grass lies waiting for its coat to turn to green. The snowbird sings the song he always sings, and speaks to me of flowers that will bloom again in spring. When I was young, my heart was young then too. Anything it would tell me, that's the thing that I would do. But now I feel such emptiness within. For the thing that I want most in life's the thing that I can't win. Spread your tiny wings and fly away, and take the snow back with you where it came from on that day. The one I love forever is untrue, and if I could, you know that I would fly away with you. The breeze along the river seems to say that it'll only break my heart again should I decide to stay. So little snowbird, take me with you when you go to that land of gentle breezes where the peaceful waters flow. Do you know it? Sing it, fake it, or hum it. all together. Spread your tiny wings and fly away. That's good. And take the snow back with you where it came from on that day. The one I love forever is untrue. And if you could, you know that I would fly away with you. Yeah, if I could, I know that I would fly away with you.
So one final song before Mourner's Kaddish. Misha Berach is a prayer for healing. And so we offer this prayer in wishing that broken hearts receive healing, that those who are in need of healing of body and spirit receive it when it is possible. But that we know that this serves as a reminder for each of us that we have the power both to pray for healing and to offer it to one another, comfort and repair.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
In just a moment, as we conclude this collective celebration, we'll have the chance to go out and have a little nosh, have a little snack, and continue to share stories. Because I know that for the people who shared, every single person in this space is carrying a story, a memory, a way to honor Andy's life and to offer comfort to his family, which might be overwhelming, which is why I'm going to remind you again, please write your memories down and share them with Vicky so that way they can have your stories to be able to reflect on in the days and weeks and months to come. Yes, Vicky? Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, Vicky is an extrovert. I'm going to say things that don't need to be said. So we're first going to... That's exactly right. Yes, so absolutely. So you'll go out first, so you can pan the crowd. Perfect. So we'll slight choreography, and then we'll get back into ritual. Vicky and family will leave first, and then we will, so she can see you, which I love so much. But first, Kaddish. Kaddish is a chance, especially in this first year, to mark time, recognizing the grief is not linear, but instead cyclical. It's in a spiral, and we take time through the first week, the first month, the first year, for some people, multiple times a day, just to say, where am I today? How am I doing? What am I remembering? What am I grieving? What am I saying thank you for? And so today is just another chance to say Kaddish in what will be a lifelong process and project of remembering and loving Andy in this way. So I'm going to invite Andy's family, please, to rise. And I'll invite the community to rise as you're able with them as we say Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen yehe shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam ulalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei d'kudsha, brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen, yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen, oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, V'imru amen. May you be comforted. May you be comforted in this time and know that you are surrounded by love. And may the life and the memory of Andy Silberman be a blessing. Good afternoon, everyone. Be well.